Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to another edition of This or That, or maybe the other thing. Well, today we're going to do something just a little bit fun. I'm going to answer 5 questions that I've gotten in the last couple of weeks. I would say within the last month or maybe 4 weeks. I'm going to answer 5 different questions that I've gotten. But usually what we do with the this or that questions is I give you a question having to do with yarn or crochet or beads or something crafty, because we're pretty crafty people. And then I give you a chance to give your opinion. And remember, when it comes to, our questions, this or that, or whatever they are, there are no wrong answers. You just give your opinion, and that's fine, because we all learn and do things different. And I don't expect everybody to be like me. I mean, come on. It's only one me, right? My husband's like, there better only be one you. Alrighty, so let's get right to the point today. And what I'm going to do is I went through, I get a lot of questions every week, probably 20 or 30. And I write them down and I go through and see ones I haven't answered lately. Okay, and so I've got 5 questions that I'm going to answer, and a couple of them I'm going to do some little demos to help answer that question. Okay? All right. So the first question that I'm going to answer is this, and I got this through a comment on Facebook. This question, and they follow me on YouTube, Sara Sach Crochet Designs. They watch my Coffee and Crochet with Sara live video. And then they go to Facebook and it's Posh Pooch Designs. And then she says, and who in the world is Max and Rosie? And I thought that was a really good question. So let me answer that question for you. Max and Rosie are my 2 little chihuahuas that I've had for a very long time. And originally when I started, I started online. I've been crocheting since I was, 12, 13, 14. I'm not exactly sure exactly when. But within those years. But after our kids graduated from high school, one was in the Air Force, the other was in college, and our house was a little quiet. We decided to get dogs again, because we had dogs growing up. We had a black lab, and we had a little toy poodle at one time. And both of those have crossed the Rainbow Bridge many years ago. And so my husband and I decided to get a little puppy, and we got little Maximo. And I'm going to show you a video in just a second. We'll click over to that in just a second. But I got little Maximo. He was about a year old, and we had him for a couple of months, and I thought, he's kind of lonely. He needs a girlfriend or a sister, so when we're not home, he's not lonely. So then we went and got Rosie. They're both rescue dogs. They're both, Rosie was about 6 weeks old, and she was starving. She was very thin, didn't even weigh a pound. I think they said she was 14 ounces. Okay, and so we got her, and they just bonded. They are brother and sister, girlfriend and boyfriend, whatever you want to call them. They are bonded. And when one of them has to go to the vet, the other one is miserable. Okay, when Max goes to the vet, Rosie paces and can't calm down. When Rosie goes to the vet, Max whines. They miss each other when they're not there. Okay, so we've had them a long time. Maximo is now 16 years old. And Rosie is 15. Okay, let me go over that video real quick so you can see them. So those are their little poofs that I made for them that they love to lay on. And they're right over here, and they sit right there the whole time for all my videos. Anytime I say, okay, Mama's going to go do a video, they follow me in there. Okay, so that was question number 1. Max and Rosie are my chihuahuas, and they're the reason I got online, because when I first started doing crochet online, writing patterns and things like that, I was writing dog patterns, and then it kind of morphed into other things. And I kept the name Posh Pooch Designs on my Facebook page just because it's so tied in with my emails and all my pictures. You'll see it says www.poshpoochdesigns.com, which is my web page. You can find that link down underneath this video as well. But that's how it all started online. And then it morphed into regular patterns and then into, of course, my YouTube channel. And I do very little dog things anymore. I have lots of patterns on Ravelry.com if you want to go and look for my dog hats, dog beanies, dog sweaters, dog stuff. Now, I do occasionally still do a dog blanket, or a lot of people like my dog cowls, because when your dog's in a sweater but it's cold outside, it's kind of nice to have that to pull down over their ears. Anyway, that's who Max and Rosie are. Question number 2. One of the questions that I got a couple of weeks ago is, I was watching your YouTube channel and you thread a needle so quickly. How can you do that? Well, it is hard if you can't see real well. And I wear thick glasses. I've worn them, most of my adult life. Actually, when I got pregnant with my daughter, my eyes went crazy, So anyway, I've been wearing them for a long time, and it is really hard to thread a needle. So I'm going to show you the technique that I use to make it easy. All right, so I have some medium weight number 4 yarn here. This is just an acrylic, and I have my needle. And what I do, and it doesn't matter the fiber of the yarn that I'm using, whether it be cotton, alpaca, wool, or whatever, this is how I usually do it. I take the yarn and I fold it over the needle and make it flat. So I'm squishing it, and then it can go right in the needle. Now I have a really big eyed needle there so that you can see that. Another thing that I do sometimes, usually with cotton, is I'll open up the end of that yarn so that see how it kind of frays open? And that helps you make it more flat. Cotton is a little harder to thread, but if you make it flat like that, then it threads really easy. There's a lot of people tell me I hate weaving in ends because I hate threading the needle because I can't see the eye of the needle. So make sure you have what's called a tapestry needle or a yarn needle, because they have longer, wider eyes, and then fold it over like that. And I'm telling you, it makes it super easy to thread a needle. And then weaving in, maybe less annoying. All right, so question number 3. And this question I was kind of unexpected when it came in, because I didn't really think about it. When I do a slip knot, I just do it. And I know there are lots of different techniques in making a slip knot, but I have done this way. I do it for like as long as I can remember, as long as I've ever been crocheting. And it's really just a really simple thing. But I had to really think about it because I haven't really thought, well, how do I do that? I just do it. All right, so let me show you how I start with a slip knot. Now, I know there are lots of other techniques, but this is just the way I've always done it. I just take the yarn and I put it over my finger and I twist my finger like that. Okay, so here's my hook. We make our slip knot. Then we pull that loop through. Then we can put our hook right on there and start our work. All right, I'm going to show you again. I'm going to do it a little bit slower. So I put the yarn, I make sure I have a tail of yarn for weaving in. I put the yarn over my finger. I twist my finger around. And then I grab this and pull that through. That's how I make a slip knot. And so that's the technique that I have used for as long as I can remember how to make a slip knot. And of course, that slip knot is how you begin making your chains or foundation crochet rows on just about any project. You have to start with a slip knot. All right, so question number 4 is, I cannot do a slip stitch. Why do we have to do slip stitches? Well, slip stitches are just something you really need to know when it comes to crochet, because that's how we join our rows, and sometimes we use them for a lot of different other things. But I can hardly even think of any pattern that doesn't have at least one slip stitch in it. And a slip stitch is just slipping the loop onto your crochet hook. Let me show you. So here's just a circle I've crocheted. We use these for talking about embroidering on. And after I finish a row around, we need to slip stitch. All right, and the slip stitch really is just, you go in the next stitch, you pull up a loop of yarn, and you just slip that loop of yarn over the loop that's on your hook. It's a really simple process, but a lot of people struggle with it. One thing to remember is when you're doing rounds or rows, but especially on rows, This loop that's down here is not a stitch. Right here. And that's where sometimes we get our count off. Make sure you, as you can see, this is our chain 3 here, and then there's our single crochet. Here's our double crochet, and so this loop is not a stitch. And a lot of people will accidentally add an extra stitch by stitching in that. And it's not. That's your slip stitch from the previous row. All right, so you just go in, grab that yarn and pull it through, and then you slip that loop of yarn through the loop that's already on your hook. And that's all a slip stitch is. Getting that extra stitch in there from time to time happens because we forget that that's not a stitch. That's your slip stitch from the previous row. Don't stitch in that. Okay, you want to, and when you're doing your slip stitch, remember the slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch unless the pattern says it does. Now, if the pattern says it does, then that's a different story. But for the most part, slip stitches are very important in crochet. We join rounds, we join squares, and sometimes we use them for edging, you know, and things like that. I have rarely ever seen a pattern that doesn't have at least one slip stitch in the pattern, and it's a simple process and a simple technique, but it seems like it messes a lot of people up in thinking, you know, because you can not put that in the right spot or not join to the right spot. And it's real important when the pattern says join to the chain 3 with a slip stitch, you go in the chain 3. If the pattern says join to, say, the single crochet, like this one on this row, we join to the single crochet. You're skipping that little loop at the bottom down there. You're joining to the first single crochet with a slip stitch. And slip stitch are very important in crochet. Alrighty, question number 5 is our last question. And our question has more to do with tying off and why am I doing that extra loop? And that's something that I have done for a very long time. I don't even know where I learned it. I just started doing it. And let me show you what I'm talking about when it comes to tying off and that extra loop. So I'm going to show you again here. This is just the circle that we had. All right, so we joined with a slip stitch. All right, and so I'm going to tie off. So I'm going to take the loop and just pull it through. But I'm not going to pull that all the way through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the next stitch from behind and grab that loop and pull it to the back. I'm going to turn this over, and then I'm going to tie off my yarn. Okay? And that gives you a much nicer appearance on the front. And then you can just take your needle. We'll thread that needle like I showed you. And then we can just weave this in. And weaving in isn't one of the questions, but remember, if you can, weave through stitches, not holes, and through the fibers of the yarn. And that will help your weave in stay in better. And go forward and backwards. And a trick that I've also learned is if my yarn is a little too short, I'll go ahead and put my needle through some of the stitches, and then I'll thread it and pull it through because it was too short for the stitches, or for the end of the tail, not the stitches. Okay, and then we can cut that off. That looks nice and tidy on the back and nice and tidy on the front. Alrighty, so I've answered 5 questions for today that I've gotten in the last couple of weeks. And this is something that I really like to do. Because if people are asking me these questions, there's probably other people out there that have the same questions. Why do you do what you do, you know? And a lot of times I don't even think about some of that stuff because I've done it forever. Well, a lot of people haven't. And so if I can help you by answering some questions, I will. So for today's This and That video, our question actually is, do you have some questions to some things that maybe I do in my crochet that you don't understand, or you just have questions maybe that about crochet, you know, and a lot of these things are really small things, but the small things are important because they can mess up the big things. Because think about this, if you're stitching a big blanket and it's a big round like star or hexagon or something, and you aren't joining properly, same thing with a hat. If you're making a hat and you're not joining with a slip stitch to the right spot, you could accidentally add a stitch each row, and before you know it, your hat is huge. Or maybe you're not joining right and you're losing a stitch each row and your hat's getting tinier and tinier, you know. So these things are important, but even though they're small things. And so if you have a question that has anything to do with yarn or crochet, go ahead and comment down in the comments section, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And what I do is when I'm reading through all the comments, I have my notebook and I just jot down all the questions, and then I go back through and then, like I do a video like today, and just answer a few of those questions for you. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for being with me and watching my videos. Be sure and comment, because again, I love to read your comments. And I'll see you next time for another edition of This or That, or like today, the other thing. See you next time.